Hey everyone, it's time for another edition of Beaver Banter.
Beaver Sports Talk lives here.
It is the Beaver Banter podcast. I'm CJ Baumgartner. There is Ian Rivers. Always a great day to be a Beaver, Ian. And as the a little lower third banner says on the YouTube stream, which is why you should watch the Beaver Banter podcast on YouTube, the late season push is on. Here we go.
Yeah, it's in full swing. This late season push is, and unfortunately for a few teams, it didn't go as we hoped this last weekend. But it doesn't change much for most of them. So I guess that's fortunate at the same time as it is a little bit unfortunate. So yeah, we'll dive into all of that today. Men's hockey, of course, had an off weekend. The baseball series got canceled that was supposed to be played outdoors in the Midwest in February. I'm shocked. We're both shocked. Yeah.
Where was it? It was supposed to be played in where?
Illinois, I believe.
Yeah, because it was
Rockhurst, Illinois.
Yes.
No, they're playing Rockhurst.
They're playing Rockhurst in Kansas.
Kansas City. Oh yeah.
Yeah, Kansas City.
Yep.
Yeah, they
still pretty cold.
Still pretty darn cold.
Yeah.
Just maybe a little too ambitious to schedule those games. They got some games coming up against Parkside at Kenosha, Wisconsin next weekend. I know it's supposed to get warm over the weekend and start to kind of pick up temps.
It is.
But that still might be a little ambitious, but hey, we'll be there if the baseball team gets a game in. Then you kind of have the last weekend in February, early March, you have to go down to William Jewell. That's in Liberty, Missouri, to play a few, and then you're in NSIC play. So no big Florida trips here for the team, although this year maybe it would be better. Maybe it would have been the year. You can't predict how cold it's going to be, but it's one of those weeks where it's like, man, I kind of wish I was playing ball in Florida if you're one of those baseball guys. But anyway, a lot of stuff going on around campus, I think, is the general vibe that we got. And like you said, hockey's off. So let's start with men's basketball because they played over the weekend and they got swept over the weekend. They lost to Augustana. They lost to Wayne State. Not ideal, but they did get some things going their way, Ian, and they are able to clinch a spot into the NSIC men's basketball tournament. Yeah.
They as we kind of said in our pre-show ramblings, they kind of backed in, but it happens based off of the little 4 games out of 5 that you had before this, prior to this weekend. You were hoping, given the standings of these two teams, which we discussed was like right above where you were, that you were going to be able to maybe make up another spot or two potentially in the rankings and potentially not have to play a 5 seed. It looks now like you're going to be that 12 seed in the NSIC tournament. But like we discussed with Alex, it's one game, and the 5 seed and the 12 seed are not necessarily separated by much. And I think it's going to be what Bemidji State team shows up on that given day, which would be, I believe, next week already. Probably Thursday, I think, is when they play that. Or no, actually, I think it's like Wednesday or Tuesday or Wednesday. Because then
it usually is like earlier in the week, if I remember that right.
Yeah, because then the Pentagon tournament is like later that weekend. So I think, like you said, it would be probably like next Tuesday or Wednesday.
Wednesday on the BSU Beavers webpage. It has the Wednesday is the first round.
Okay, perfect. So they will have a game. That much we know.
And we can break it down next week.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect. And also, like we talked about with Alex, CJ, these games, both of them, I mean, what did Alex say? He wanted to see consistent game out of these teams. The halftime deficits on both of these games, BSU trailed by 13 against Augustana, ended up losing that game by 3. And they trailed Wayne by 27 points at the half.
51 points in the first half.
51-24. They did win the second half 49-27, but it was only good enough to claw back within 5. And that's a huge detractor from the weekend. I mean, the inability to play consistent hoops has really killed them lately, and it kind of reared its ugly head here. looking over the shooting numbers, look at the first half and second half splits. BSU shot 25% from the field in the first half, 52 in the second half, 33% in the first half from beyond the three-point arc, and 53%, 7 of 13 in the second half. So it was really just lights out in the second half. That was on Friday against Augustana. And then you tab over to the Wednesday game, Wayne State. That's why I've got W. 32% in the first half from the field, 66%, 16 of 24 in the second half. That's crazy. 28%, and then 58% in the second half for 3-point. So yeah, just a tale of two halves, and it's upsetting because you want the team to win, of course, and you were hoping that they would be able to, go on a little bit more of a momentous run, and then you were going to come into this weekend and be like, yeah, I know we're playing Concordia, but we played them tough the first time, and
right,
it's Duluth, and we can hang with them maybe.
Or rolling, like that kind of thing. And like you said, the battle of two halves has kind of been the thing. I know Alex hammered it home last week, but we've kind of been saying that all season, like, this team is talented enough to run with anybody in the conference. That we know, and they've shown that. It's just, like you said, every once in a while, it's like you look and it's like, well, you got yourself in too big of a hole at half, or you ran right with them in the first half and you just couldn't keep up in the second. It's been kind of that story where, and look, the teams that are at the top of the conference are at the top of the conference because they were able to put two halves together. Like, they're able to do that consistently. It's why they're towards the top, and it's why Bemidji State is towards the bottom of the playoff teams. But that being said, there's, like you said, it's a little harder to justify, like, how confident can you be in a victory against Concordia this weekend? A little bit less after what they put together last weekend. But that being said, they are still a talented team, and it wouldn't be surprising if we're watching on Friday night and all of a sudden it's like midway through the second half and Bemidji State's right in that ball game. Like, this team is talented. This team can put it together. It's just finding that way to get two consistent halves out of them. And if they can do that, if they got two more games to figure it out before it's win or go home, and if they can get on a little run or figure out a way to do that over the tournament, they can surprise some people.
Absolutely, yeah. And that's the one thing that you just hope for. This team is talented enough that in any given game, they can put up a competitive, box score and even win the game against some of these teams. I don't know that I trust them to do it 4 games in a row in an NSIC tournament, but
the competition theoretically getting tougher and tougher down the road.
Yeah, but that's a story, I guess, for a different day, maybe next week as we're kind of predicting the tournament. But yeah, I mean, some notable things that stand out to me from the box score as well. John Sutherland, 0 points on Friday night against Augustana. He only shot the ball 5 times, but he was held to 0 for 5 in 36 minutes, which was the second most on the team behind John Pekarich. So that's pretty notable when one of your better players is not putting up that many points. He only did shoot the ball 12 times on the weekend. He went 4 of 7 for 9 points on Saturday. John Pekarich had a huge game on Saturday. He went 9 of 7 from the field, including 6 of 12 on 3-point attempts for 28 points in that comeback effort against Wayne.
And that's something Alex talked about last week.
Yeah, the Beavers have been shooting the 3 ball a lot better lately, and that was true even in these games. I mean, you look at the full game totals, 42% against Wayne State and 41% against Augustana, and they were 2, competitive games when you want to talk about how close they were. Maybe if they don't go down by 27 and they lose by 5 to Wayne, we feel a little better about how the game went. Maybe, Wayne just played really well, and we're talking about this game in a completely different light. But yeah, good shooting still for this team, and you got to hope that continues, because that's going to be something that you can lean on when you try to make your tournament push here in a week or so.
Yeah, and I think now is probably, now that we know that they're into the NSIC tournament, Ian, if we take a look at the standings, kind of where do things sit with Bemidji State? Kind of, do we know quite who they're going to play in the NSIC tournament, or kind of like, is it down to a couple teams? Where are we at?
No, we have zero clue. And you know why? Because there are 7 teams right now that are tied. The top 5 teams in the conference are tied at 14-6. That goes from Concordia St. Paul all the way down to St. Cloud State in 5th place. And then the 2 teams below that even are at 13-7. and then Minot's there with 12 wins. So honestly, it could be any number of these teams. You'll know more after Friday night's games have wrapped up, because some of those teams will play games and it'll at least rule out like probably 4 of them. But honestly, it could be anybody in that pack right now. I mean, if the Beavers go and upset Concordia St. Paul, guess what? That probably drops them right down into that 5 spot. So it could be all the way, it could be up to Bemidji State to determine their own fate this weekend. So that's unfortunate that we don't even have like a semblance of an idea what team it is. I mean, we do, if you want to consider the top 8 teams. We're going to play one of the teams that's getting a home game. That's basically all that we know.
Pretty much.
And it does speak to this conference this year. I mean, you look at the overall records for these teams. 19-7 is the best one, maybe 21-8 there with Minot State overall. Yeah, Bemidji State is not in that pack, but it speaks to how deep and how much parity is in this conference this year. There's not one team that you would necessarily go into the tournament and say, man, I'm terrified to play them if I'm the Beavers. Every team in this conference is susceptible to losing. Each of them has lost to at least 6 other teams in this conference, or at least 6 other times, I should say, because there might be double ups in there. But yeah, it's going to be a very interesting tournament, because I would hate to be somebody whose job it was to predict what was going to happen in the Pentagon, because this could go any number of ways. But yeah, we really don't know who it's going to be yet for the first round for the Beavers, unfortunately.
Yeah, a lot of stuff still in play, but guess we'll figure it out when everybody else does. And like you talked about, there's a lot of parity in this conference this year. And also, Bemidji State has proven, like we talked about before, that they can run with anybody. There's nobody that they should be scared of. There's nobody that you're like, I mean, there's some matchups that are better than others, of course, but you're not sitting there like, oh boy, I really hope it's not this team, or I really hope it's not that team, or whatever. You kind of are willing to take your luck with whoever, also kind of knowing that that's just kind of your playoff fate. You're going to play one of the big dogs, and you're going to have an opportunity to go into their place and upset them. And until we know who that is, we'll just assume that it's any one of those 8 schools throughout there. All right, Ian, let's talk a little. Let's go and kind of flip things over and talk a little women's basketball. As their season one more weekend closer to being in the books. And we talked about last week, just trying to find ways to end that season on a high note, try and find things to kind of get you feeling good heading into that next season. Kind of just give us the lowdown. What happened last weekend?
Well, it was not too bad, because they did split on the weekend. They picked up a win over Augustana, who, as we said, was bottom of the conference on the women's side. So they were able to pick up that win, and they really didn't have that one quarter that we kind of talked about with Alex, where things kind of fell apart, which is usually the case in some of these losses. The Wayne State game did not go as happily for them, and unfortunately, there was that one quarter. It seems to be the fourth quarter in that game. They lost the fourth quarter 19-7, and that made them lose that game by 3. But Alex had talked about just wanting to see success from individual players that were kind of, peaking at the right time at the end of the season. Aaron Barrett had 15 points in Friday night's win, including 5 of 10 shooting from the field. It seemed to be a pretty decent shooting day for the team. Definitely helps that you played a team in Augustana who didn't necessarily shoot the best themselves, but you had a decent day from some of these players. Aubrey Hayer added 13 points of her own, and then 12 points off the bench from Jeanette Haney. I'm not sure how to pronounce that necessarily, so I apologize if I butchered that. But then you turn around and Tyrion Plash, that's another name we've been bringing up all season, 19 points on 6 of 9 from the field and 4 of 7 from deep. So, yeah, again, it stinks because you did have the lead there in the fourth quarter against Wayne, and it would have been awesome, and it would have been something that I believe this team did at the end of last season, is pick up a weekend sweep where, yeah, they might be a little bit too far out of it in terms of the overall standings, but they still got some big momentum deep into the season, and it's something to look at and build towards for next season. So that would have been fun, but like we said, at the end of the day, I don't think it changes much. This team is still sitting at 14th in the conference. This would have put them just one game behind Minnesota Duluth and Winona State. But with only 2 games to go, there's no guarantee that you would have been able to sneak into the playoffs anyways. So who knows what could have happened, but I would say a pretty good weekend overall still for the women's basketball team.
Yeah, like you said, they had an opportunity to get a win over Wayne State, just couldn't quite hang on and keep that lead, and they end up falling there. And that would have been a nice one. Obviously, Wayne State they're about 500, a little bit below. And yeah, it would have been good. Looking back to last year's schedule, because I was wondering, they did get a split with it was a split with MSU Moorhead and Northern State, and then a win against Minnesota Crookston on the Thursday. And then it was and then they ended the season on a 4-game losing streak, but they did kind of put like 3 of 4, like 4 of 5 together in that early February run. That's what we're thinking of. So
right, yeah.
Just as clarification, because I couldn't remember. I was like you. I kind of thought it was a little bit closer to the end of the year, but they still had kind of like this year a run where they were able to pick up some wins and get some momentum rolling. Not only that, Ian, they did tie last year's win total. So with a win here in this final weekend, they could get 7 wins and go to possibly 7-19 or 8-18. And the last time they won 8 games in a season, you got to go back to the 22-23 season. So if they get a weekend sweep, they could match that win total for the women's basketball team. So this is important, trying to, again, just stack this second half of the season on top of each other and try and roll into next year with some momentum. So that's kind of where things are at for this team with the remaining 2 games left. Like the men's team, they will also be on the BSU gymnasium floor. They will also be hosting Concordia St. Paul on Friday and then UMD on Saturday. Saturday is senior day, and then Friday for the men's and women's basketball teams, it is the Buc-ee's Pantry Canned Food Drive as well. That's going on there as well, along with Breast Cancer Awareness Night, according to BSUBeavers.com. So that's what's going on there.
Good opportunity on Saturday, by the way, against the Minnesota Duluth team who sits 13th in the conference. It's going to be senior day. You want to dash their hopes of going to the NSIC tournament and pick up a win that would put you over your win total for last season, because that game against Concordia, you're at home, but they are 24-2. Unlike the men's team or the men's side of the conference, there is quite a few teams at the top of this conference who are heavyweights, and Concordia St. Paul is one of them. If you can pull it off, more power to you. But yeah, a great opportunity to at least dash Minnesota Duluth's hopes of going to the tournament and picking up a win on senior day to improve your win total over last season to at least 7, which would be awesome.
Not only, by the way, would you get a win over UMD, not only would you dash their playoff hopes, but also, Ian, you would get a season sweep over UMD, which would also be great. There's a lot of conference rivals on the Beaver Banter podcast, but one we will always show up for is the UMD rivalry.
Absolutely.
Got to get that supremacy. Got to win. So if you're going to pick one, ladies, this weekend, that's the one to do it. No offense to Concordia St. Paul, but I don't. Like there's not the rivalry aspect for like UMD, because
yeah, I was thinking about that this weekend because I was looking at I think it was the Sickos committee on Twitter posted the thread of the Minnesota colleges that have football teams over the logo of, and I'm looking at some of them and I'm like, man, I forget that like SMSU is even in Minnesota. It's just like it doesn't feel like it's a inter-Minnesota.
South Dakota.
Yeah, and then Concordia too is like, I know it says St. Paul right there in the title, but it's like here we are disrespecting the top 2 teams in the conference, by the way. So it shows us
we're talking about football. We're talking about football.
Yeah, exactly.
In which case we own both of them.
We're fine in that case. So but yeah, it's a good point. It just doesn't feel the same going up against the Golden Bears as it does whenever the Bulldogs come to town.
Yeah, and I don't know why that is. I've been to both the UMD and Concordia St. Paul campuses. I've been to I've had some stuff with both of them, but like I don't know, man. There's just no like there, and maybe it does stem from football and things kind of bleed over from there. Plus the hockey aspect.
Well, it's a regional thing. It's definitely hockey is the biggest thing, or maybe the biggest, but one of the bigger. Yeah, being on Highway 2, you're right down Highway 2. Northern Minnesota, and just the fact that I don't know, I can't think of the last time that maybe in soccer, where BSU and Concordia have kind of been fighting for conference supremacy.
That's the rivalry, yeah.
And then like it feels like it pops up more often with Duluth, where you're in a close combatants in like football or something for the top of the NSIC North back in the day. So that definitely has more to do with it than anything else. But anyways.
All right. As we shift gears here, let's go into a little a women's hockey. But before we do that, Ian, we haven't done this in a while. We probably should plug that old Beaver Banter Discord.
Yeah, absolutely. Get in the Beaver Banter Discord. It's unfortunately creeping towards the off season for a lot of the winter sports, and especially with men's hockey, which I know is one of the more popular sports in the Beaver community. That's when the transfer portal is going to start to heat up. You might see some players come in and some players leave. Obviously, there's other great resources that are available for you, but you can find all of those in the Beaver Banter Discord. It's definitely the place to be if you're a Beaver sports fan, and honestly a fan of anything else. I know that I'm blanking on what the Four Nations tournament has been going on lately, and that's been a big topic of conversation in the Discord lately. So there's plenty more to talk about than other than Beaver sports. So, but the Beaver sports are the main thing you're going to want to join for. It's on all of our socials. Go check it out. The Beaver Banter Discord. Get in there.
Yeah, exactly. And also, if you want to just go into the Discord to give Ian a hard time about the Chargers, you can do that as well.
Absolutely, yeah. It seems to be pretty common. I don't know. I think I had pretty good this year. Nobody gave me too much.
To be fair, your team went 10-6 and made, or 11-6 and made the playoffs. So
yeah,
that helps things. Last year
it
when
does.
he got dunked on by the Raiders on national television, that's when the guns come out.
No, I'm having flashbacks.
Anyway, so let's talk a little women's hockey, Ian. They got a split over the weekend, and that's kind of what we expected. We knew that there was a winnable weekend for the women's hockey team, and they were able to do that. Would have been nice to get the sweep, but hey, we're not scoffing at it too much. They're able to get back in the win column, and they're now 6-26-1 on the campaign. They got one more weekend left in the regular season against Wisconsin at the Sanford Center to wrap things up, and then you get into the conference quarterfinals. But looking at the series right now against St. Thomas, a 5-0 win on Friday night against, I know this is women's hockey, so receiving votes doesn't necessarily mean as much, but against a receiving votes St. Thomas team, you win 5-0. It's got to feel pretty good on a Friday.
Absolutely, yeah. To shut out the Tommies and really, I mean, that's the win for the season series. You won that season series against them, even though you unfortunately were dropped the game on Saturday. You still went 3-1 against them, picked up 9 points on the season, I believe. I think they had a clean sweep the last time around. But yeah, really, really good weekend. Haley Armstrong with 2 goals. And then, man, I could have sworn she got a hat trick this weekend. Or maybe, no, I think she scored a hat trick or somebody did. Let me check. No, it was Morgan Smith. Morgan Smith got a hat trick on. I apologize. But yeah, 5 goals. Haley Armstrong, Izzy Fairchild, Haley Armstrong again, Heidi Strumpf, and Kate Johnson. So that was awesome to see. And then I believe it was Eva Filipova who was in net for the Beavers who got the shutout win. It was. So yeah, really cool to see. And it's something to take from this season. You know, you're probably going to finish 8th. I think you actually are, because if you look at the next 4, maybe 5 games, hopefully 5 games that the Beavers are going to play, they're all against the number 1 team in the country in Wisconsin, because you end your regular season playing them here in the Sanford Center, and then they did win the WCHA regular season title. So they will be the 1 seed, and you will have to go to Madison to play them in the quarterfinals. But yeah, a good weekend still. I mean, a split is, hey, you split on the road with a receiving votes team in a tough conference. You know, yes, it's St. Thomas. Yes, we've had their number for a majority of their Division I, tenure, but even still, the only disappointing thing I think is giving up 4 straight goals in the second and third period to drop a 2-0 lead in that game. I had the tweet like ready to fire about like, ice hockey, field hockey, disc jockey, doesn't matter. Beavers gonna sweep the Tommies, something like that. I was workshopping a pretty good tweet. Yeah, and then it was ripped away from me. So unfortunately for that, but yeah, it's still a good weekend. And like you said, they increased their win total to 6, just 2 more than last year. And I think you just like the way that this team is headed. You know, next year is really going to be a test because, you know, this year you were able to have a competitive series with, obviously you beat St. Thomas over the course of the season series, and you were able to play pretty competitively 4 times with Minnesota State. And so if you can go into next year and maybe now you know, take the season series with Minnesota State and you take more points off of a Duluth or a St. Cloud or a team like that, and you just, you know, slowly climb that ladder, and maybe next year your goal is to finish 7th in the conference instead of 8th or 6th even. We'll see where we go, and we'll see what happens in the transfer portal, but I think that we're building something good here with first-year head coach Amber Frickland, and honestly, this is going to be the time. Let's say they get into that tournament, steal a game on the road in Madison and lose in 3. I mean, that is a huge program win for a team that's trying to turn the corner. You've got 4 opportunities at least to pull off an upset win against the number 1 team in the country, which would be awesome. And so that's all I'm hoping for is just win one of these last 4 games, even if it's the regular season one. And then, you know, if you get swept in the conference quarterfinals, and you know it is what it is, but just take one of them. Come on, they're not that good. They're not that good, right?
No. Better dead than red, I always say.
So, true.
I will say, by the way, looking at the win totals from a season ago, they, like you said, they were 430-2, so they've already surpassed last year's win total. A year before, in the 22-23 season, they were 530-1. This is the most wins that BSU women's hockey has had in a season since the 21-22 season, where they went 11-20-3. So, like you said, it just feels like this program, again, it's a small step, but it just feels like things are just kind of, there's a little bit of energy right now in the program. And that's not to take anything away from the teams of the last couple of years. It's just when you get a different head coach in there, just a different voice, sometimes a different thing, and that can just give you a little jolt or a little fresh voice. And that's, I don't know what's all gone into it, and things have just kind of developed and things have gotten better this year compared to the last couple. And that is something we're celebrating, even if it's just a minor goal. And just kind of like you said, as they slowly climb that ladder, try and get to the team that they want to be at. So that's how things stand right now with the women's hockey team. Let's wrap things up. Talking a little men's hockey. They did not.
One sec. Got a shout out. I already did, but officially, Ava Filipova won WCHA Goaltender of the Week, and Morgan Smith won Rookie of the Week for the WCHA. So wanted to get that out there officially. I know I congratulated them both on good weekends, but they were also award winners this week too. So congrats to them.
You get a Hattie, you probably are in pretty strong contention to be our Beaver Banter Athlete of the Week too, right?
Yeah, we'll give it up. We'll give it to Morgan Smith. I think that's her second hat trick of the season. I can't remember if that's true or not. I think I saw that on Twitter this week. If it's not, I do apologize.
That's her
I do believe
hat trick.
Yeah, which would make sense that it's her second this season, given she is a freshman.
So there we go.
Let's go.
Perfect. All right. Let's talk a little men's hockey, Ian. They were off over the weekend on the bye, and it's a weird time because 2 weeks ago, I would have told you the bye couldn't come soon enough. And then they have a great series, or at least a much better series, best conference series of the season against Michigan Tech. And you're like, no, darn it, a bye week. It's going to stall any kind of good momentum that they just picked up over that series. That being said, they have the weekend. They had last weekend off. They get ready for a final push here in the CCHA, regular season push as they try and solidify their playoff positioning. They have their final home series of the season against Bowling Green at the Sanford Center. And of course, the Teddy Bear Toss coming up this weekend as well. And then you finish up the season against Minnesota State in Mankato next weekend. But focusing on this series against Bowling Green, Ian, you can't lose the Teddy Bear Toss series.
No. It's going to be a lot of these players' last chance to play at the Sanford Center too. We have a big grouping of senior players or fifth-year players on this team that are certainly not going to want to go out, hopefully, like the last couple of home series have gone. And it's a big weekend. I mean, your backs are kind of against the wall here. You're the 8th seed right now in the conference. You are tied with Ferris State. So over the weekend, I guess I'll bring it up. Ferris State and Lake Superior State played 2 games. They split officially, but Ferris State's win was in overtime. Lake Superior's was in regulation. So Lake Superior State jumps you by 3 points. Ferris State jumps just 2 points, which is now even with you at 29. But you definitely have the harder schedule of probably those teams based off the fact that you're playing Bowling Green and Minnesota State over your last 2 weekends. So honestly, any point you can pick up here is going to be huge because Bowling Green is a good team. So that's reason number one. They have an outside chance right now of winning the conference. I mean, if they get 6 points against you and Lake Superior State takes some points off of Minnesota State, then they're kind of still in the race, but it looks pretty outlandish at this point. They're probably just going to be a home ice team, maybe a team that you see yourself playing in the first round of the CCHA playoffs. So just go out there and hopefully continue some of that momentum and that offensive prowess that you showed off against Michigan Tech. Honestly, is the biggest thing you're going to want to look for. The Beavers are honestly only 3 points behind the Tommies too. St. Thomas also sits at 32 points. So you got 2 teams at 32 points and 2 teams at 29 points. Again, given the fact that you probably needed to make up your points and be leading this group going into these last 4 games against these really good teams, against Bowling Green and Minnesota State. Now you're probably going to have to see yourself take, 8-9 points from these last 3 games to realistically see yourself sit in the 5th position at the end of the season here. Because if you look around the CCHA this weekend alone, St. Thomas plays Northern Michigan. You got to assume they're probably, maybe you shouldn't assume because it's Northern Michigan and hey, the Beavers couldn't sweep them. Obviously, they got swept, but you got to assume they're going to pick up at least 4 points. And considering the fact that you're down by 3, that's not good for you. Lake Superior State does play against Minnesota State and Ferris State does play against Michigan Tech. So both of those teams could drop points, but again, you still have to win your games to do anything about it. And I guess at the very least, if nothing else, kind of like we talked about with men's hoops with Alex last week, just get some more wins. Maybe you split this weekend, but it's like, okay, whatever. We didn't get swept on home ice. Bowling Green's a good team. We played competitively and we still lost, a 4-3 game on Saturday or something. I don't know. Play good hockey over these last couple of weeks. And then hopefully you have some momentum heading into the quarterfinals. And honestly, like we talked about last week, pick up 1 spot because it looks now kind of like Minnesota State is going to win the CCHA. Augustana over the weekend took 4 of a possible 6 points off Michigan Tech. So they're sitting right now at a 625 win percentage. Minnesota State is at a 697. I don't have the math in front of me. I don't know what Minnesota State has to pick up to clinch that or what their magic number is. But it would be kind of cool if you were able to go into their barn next weekend and rip the McNaughton Cup away from them potentially. So keep an eye on what Lake Superior State does because God forbid if they're able to take some points off Minnesota State, maybe you can't catch Lake State next weekend, but maybe you can dash the Maverick Streams for the 2nd year in a row of hoisting the McNaughton Cup. But we'll see. That's a story for another time. I'll be interested to see what Christian Stover's status is for this game. I know he picked up a little bit of an injury in the game on the last Saturday that they played. Actually, I think they might have played in an exhibition this weekend. But I can't see the box score for that against the US and TDP. So I don't know if Christian Stover played in that. He is one of the better goaltenders in the league this year for Bowling Green. Of course, Cole Moore behind him is not necessarily a slouch. He's obviously a massive, massive human. And he's pretty good himself, but keep your eyes on that. It'll be interesting to see whether or not Christian Stover is able to play for this series. That might give you a little bit of an edge in this one if he maybe misses some time, especially because Cole Moore has not gotten that much ice time lately. So he might be coming in a little bit cold. So, yeah, we'll see. I don't know. I don't have a ton to say about this weekend. There's nothing we don't know about this team. We just got to score goals. You can't come into this weekend and say, all right, we're going to score 4 goals on the weekend and hope to get 6 points. you're probably not going to play that good a defense against a team in Bowling Green, especially that is pretty good offensively. You're probably going to have to put up at least like 7 goals on the weekend total in order to come out with a majority points on this weekend. But
this team scored 11 in their last series, so
yeah, you're hoping that carries over somehow, and you can pick up. I think that would be a good benchmark if this team can. I think 3 points is something to gun for, but if you can pick up majority points from this weekend, you're going to start feeling pretty confident heading into the CCHA tournament that, maybe you can make a Lake Superior State type run. And honestly, the hardest part is just getting through that first weekend where it's a 3-game series. Then it's just one game in the semifinals, and anything can happen in that one game. So we'll see. We got to see who the matchup is. Right now, kind of similarly to men's hoops, just because that bottom of the standings is kind of so tight and compact right now, it's really kind of hard to tell who you're going to be playing against, because you could honestly be anywhere between 5 and 8 at this point. Unfortunately, you are technically only 8 points behind Michigan Tech, but the assumption that they would drop enough points for you to pass them would probably mean that some of the other teams in between you were picking up points as well. I think that it's pretty safe to say home ice, even if you were to get 12 points out of 12, is probably out of reach at this point, unfortunately. But I think I said it last week. This is the bed you've made, and now you have to lay in it. So going to be going on the road in the first round, and this weekend is just, if nothing else, going to be hopefully stacking some momentum and some good offensive performances on top of each other.
Yeah, and the other thing too, I mentioned earlier about the bye and how it feels like, great, you had a good weekend and you can't like carry over the momentum into the next one. Maybe you can. And maybe the other thing is, even if you can't do that, maybe just having a weekend where everybody can like rest their legs. And then maybe this weekend, like you talked about, you're going to need to come out and have a good punch offensively. Maybe it does help that you're going to have, I know Bowling Green also, like you said, it kind of had a lighter weekend last week, but still, just your legs will be a little fresher. Maybe that helps just get out to the puck. Maybe that helps do some of that stuff, avoid some of the breakaways that have kind of plagued them. But also, overall, the Bowling Green one is interesting. We talked about this when Bemidji State went out to Slater Ice Arena, but if you look at the overall series against Bowling Green, Bemidji State is 19-21-4 against Bowling Green since they entered in at the time of the WCHA. Looking at the away record, Bemidji State is 5-14-2 at Slater Ice Arena. But that means at the Sanford Center, they're 14-7-2. And remember, it was a sweep last year against Bowling Green, albeit that was in December, late December. That kind of turned things around and felt the vibes pretty good. Not that that's necessarily correlation equaling causation there, but it is to say Bemidji State plays Bowling Green much better on their ice. Maybe it's just the travel just wears on you and whatever. I don't know. But Bemidji State historically has played really well against Bowling Green. And maybe that's hey, you're able to get them in a place that you rarely ever get them. So now, what happens when you play them on your home ice? That's something also to think about with this team. But mainly I'm just wondering, with the weekend off, how they look, if they look ready to go and recharged, or if they're like, we got 2 weekends and then a postseason series, and then we just like scrub the season and then let's peg it up for next year. That'll be the interesting thing. Will be effort is kind of broad, and I necessarily don't want to mean what that implies, but effort will be interesting to watch.
Yeah, I think the rust versus rest thing is always so interesting, because it's like, it really depends on how you play. It's like, well, no, it sucks that we had that bye because we came out and we looked like trash, and we needed to just keep playing because we're too rusty now. But if we come out and play well, it's like, yeah, dude, that rest was really good for us. So I don't know what it actually does for the team. In terms of like, kind of like I said, having your backs against the wall. I mean, this team is experienced, and if nothing else, I should think that would help them in a situation like this, where you need to pick up points, you need to make up ground. These players know what this time of the year means, and they don't want their season to end. I'm sure that most players, sophomore, freshman, doesn't matter, don't want their season to end. But especially a bunch of guys in their 5th year, they came back and they wanted to kind of run it back. Obviously, that dream is dashed, but they don't want their season to end like this. So I have to imagine they're going to come out playing hard. I don't believe that Tom will have this team with a lack of effort in these last couple of games. So I do hope for the best in these last couple of weeks. And it starts here with Bowling Green. You know, if you pick up 6 points out of 6, man, I'm going to go into Mankato really confident and hoping that we have a sliver of a chance to disappoint them on their home ice. But yeah, got to get through Bowling Green. I think it's just take it one game at a time from here on out, because you might only have 6 of them left depending on how it goes. But we're hoping that they have like 12 left. That would be awesome. And that would probably mean a Frozen Four berth, but we'll see. That's a story for a different day, I guess.
You know, here's going to be a couple things, Ian, that I think will be important for this Bowling Green series as I'm kind of looking at some of the stats coming into this matchup. For one is going to be face-offs always. That's been a thing that we always talk about. Bowling Green, by the way, is if you look at percentage, the top team in the CCHA in terms of winning face-offs. So that's going to be important to set the tone. The other thing will be kind of how the special teams impacts things here. Bowling Green does lead the league, CCHA, in penalties per game. They're also one of the better penalty killing teams. Their penalty kill is ranked 3rd in the CCHA. Their power play, though, is ranked 7th, where Bemidji State's is 3rd. And obviously, you know, their penalty kill is pretty good. Bemidji State's penalty kill ranking 7th in the conference right now. And the other thing about Bowling Green, they're a team that just likes to shoot. And I know sometimes we talk about Bemidji State being that way, but Bemidji State, if you're looking at shots on goal per game, Bemidji State is 5th in the CCHA, where Bowling Green is number 1. And if you look in terms of pure shots, they are about 84 shots ahead of Ferris, who's right behind them, and Bowling Green has played 1 less game. So they average about 34 shots a game. That'll be something to kind of keep in mind throughout this.
They had a game 2 Saturdays ago against St. Thomas. I'm trying to pull up the box score here to see the exact stat, but I think Jake Seibel made a program record like 57 saves in a 2-1 win over Bowling Green. They were throwing shots at the net every which way. And it's a good point about the special teams, especially, CJ. I mean, it's kind of iron on iron and rust on rust when it comes to a struggling power play for Bowling Green versus a struggling penalty kill for Bemidji State, and then a pretty good penalty kill for Bowling Green and a pretty good power play for Bemidji State. So it'll be an interesting battle of special teams once again. But the Beavers really need their power play to keep working, especially if Bowling Green is going to put you in opportunities to get power play goals. You're going to want that to be maybe Casper Magnuson comes out and has another banger of a weekend. He seems to be the power play goal merchant this season, and I'd like some more coin there, Casper, if you can hook us up this weekend.
By the way, something interesting too as you look at it, penalty minutes per game in the CCHA. If you look who is the best in terms of like keeping your team out of the box, Bemidji State actually pretty. If you look at this, the minutes in the penalty box, 205 minutes. Augustana is behind you with 230. So that's something
that's not super shocking. That's something that Tom's teams have always been pretty good at. And in the day, that's what makes it such a good penalty kill, because we didn't have to kill penalties all that often.
Right.
So it's especially frustrating now because we don't have a good penalty kill, but we don't get on the PK very often. So it makes our penalty kill percentage look even worse because we like never kill off penalties because we're never on every time we give one up, we give up a goal. So yeah, it's a double-edged sword, but I guess it's better to not take penalties if you're going to have a bad penalty kill. So hopefully it's a clean weekend for the Beavers because they're going to probably need it against this Bowling Green team who is top 3 in the conference right now and gunning for more.
Yeah, it's interesting too. Again, when you look at goals scored per game, Bemidji State 6th in the conference, Bowling Green 7th on an average basis. Bemidji State averaging 2.6 goals per game. Bowling Green is 2.48. Now, again, Bemidji State does have an extra game on Bowling Green, so that does kind of factor in a little bit. But still, overall, I mean, this will be a fun one. These are two teams that obviously Bowling Green has been able to squeeze out more wins on the year than Bemidji State has, which is why they're in the better position than the Beavers are. But it doesn't necessarily feel like, I don't know, that the gap is that big. Does that make sense? Like, it's just kind of came down to Bemidji State, I mean, look at all the points that they've left on the floor this season for the Beavers. It feels like, in terms of just Bowling Green specifically, it doesn't feel like the gap maybe is as big compared to if you're looking at the standings.
Yeah, I think it comes down to just a couple of really bad weekends for the Beavers. I mean, if you pick up and split both of those weekends where you get swept on your home ice by teams from Michigan, Ferris State and Northern Michigan, you're looking at the Beavers with, 35 points right now, which is only 4 behind Bowling Green. And then you combine that with the fact that they played a series in Slater Ice Arena where the teams split the points 3 apiece and in 2 competitive games that both went to overtime. Yeah, these teams match up pretty well against each other. So I would hope that if the Beavers were able to play competitive hockey with Bowling Green, I think we talked about it. They looked better in I can't remember which one of those nights. They looked particularly better than Bowling Green. They just couldn't really get the opportunities to go in the net for them, which is hopefully something that they can carry over from that Michigan Tech series, and hopefully that combining with the fact that it's, Teddy Bear Toss and senior night and your last home series of the season can give us the advantage this weekend at the Sanford Center. But we'll see what happens. It'll be probably a pretty good series. I would imagine that this will be just as exciting, at least as the last series against Bowling Green just a couple of weeks ago, I guess.
Keep in mind, the Teddy Bear Toss game a year ago took place at the Sanford Center when they played Ferris State. The Teddy Bear Toss was on that was a Thursday-Friday series at that point, but it was on the second game of the series. Bemidji State got a 4-1 victory. In that one, they swept Ferris that weekend, although the Thursday night's win, in that series was in overtime. So, hey, they've never lost a game during Teddy Bear Toss weekend, because I believe it just started last year. But right? Or it's been going on a little bit before?
No, I think they lost to Michigan Tech the year before, I think was the first year. Because I think I remember them going toe-to-toe with Tech, but they couldn't score on Pietala for ever. And they finally got a goal late in the game. I think it was 2-1, but I could be wrong about that.
It's a 2-3 score if it's the one I'm looking at here. So
yeah.
A 1-goal game. Yeah. So anyway, you haven't lost in the last.
They got a 50-50 shot to win this weekend. They either win or they lose.
Yeah. I mean, obviously. Duh.
Yeah.
Duh. I simply would just have my team score all the goals. Won't prevent the other team from scoring any.
Yeah. I put out a tweet a couple weeks ago that I was hoping would do a lot better on the Twitter page. That was a interesting hockey fact. When Bemidji State scores more goals than the Huskies in Houghton, they're undefeated or something like that. I was hoping that would get a little bit more of a sarcastic embrace. I think it got 5 likes, so not terrible, but definitely not one of our bigger bangers that we've ever had. Sitting in his recliner
in his living room going, oh yeah, this is doing numbers.
This is doing numbers. Yeah, that's me.
That's to be fair though, I think you got some play on your other tweet talking about Mankato, so that does help.
Yeah. Just wait. That's so funny, dude.
Algorithm is just ripping Mankato. We get a lot of.
That's so funny that they're just. I've never seen every weekend you go on there and you see Mankato fans the way that they talk about the refs being against them is crazy. Because I'm looking at Twitter and I'm seeing them
last year's series.
Dude, it's every weekend. Oh my gosh, the refs hate us. And then you look at the score and they're up 4-2. I'm like, what are you guys talking about?
They're still a PTSD from last year, from the postseason.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that one call, and I guess I haven't watched all the games. I'm sure there's some calls that have gone against them, but man, just the way that you they constantly. I'm looking at Twitter and I'm seeing ref, and they're the best team in the conference, and they're always winning games. It's you would think that you're 500, and literally every game is coming down to one call. But yeah, it's hilarious, and now they're talking about blaming the bottom of the conference for the fact that they're not an at-large team. It's yeah, I don't know what to tell you, man. I would love to be better myself and to not be a bottom 20 team in the pairwise, but
to be fair,
you lost to us.
Did a good job in non-conference play. It was the conference play that drug them down.
Yeah, exactly. Who was doing that this last year? It's like it was Alabama in the college football playoff. Is like, all right, stop, just start scheduling cupcakes because they're just going to let everybody else in. It's like, okay, yeah, but you went 3-0 in your non-conference. You lost 3 games to 500 teams in the SEC. So you can't reschedule those games to make them easier. You want to schedule somebody easier than Vanderbilt?
Right.
What do you mean? Just take care of business in your conference and you would have been fine. But
personally,
yeah, we'll
I would not have lost to Vanderbilt. That's what I would have done. That was my strategy. My
just
personal
forehead.
All right. Things are going great in Beaver territory here. We got that coming up. And as we get closer and closer to March, hopefully some softball/baseball stuff will start to break and we get closer to
softball is in action over the weekend here. By the way, I was going to throw that out before we wrapped up. They play 6 games in Rosemont, Illinois in the air-supported dome. 2 on Thursday, 2 on Friday, and 2 on Saturday. You got Purdue University Northwest, Lewis University, Wayne State University, but the Wayne State in Michigan, not in Nebraska, Roosevelt University, Upper Iowa, and Hillsdale College. So 6 games over the weekend to monitor for women's softball. Hopefully they can continue at least their 500 record that they set so far over the season.
Upper Iowa? Is that a school? Does that exist?
Yeah. You forget about the Peacocks after they dipped out from the NSIC, but
that's where I remember them from. Yep. The one town that is a 4-year university, but not a high school. That
Dubuque. Really, I didn't know that. That's crazy.
That's what I think. I think that's the story. I think they have they don't have. I mean, it's probably like I don't know what counts as a town. I don't know that area's geography, but that city does not have a high school, but they have a 4-year university because Iowa. I guess. So anyway, that'll wrap things up on the Beaver Banter podcast. Once again, follow the Discord, follow us on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. We're posting stuff on there as well. And we'll see you guys next time.